Hey folks, welcome back to another video. And I got one comment that accused me of being paid by Bitwig Studio, right? So maybe it's time to do another State of Bitwig video to talk about some problems, maybe the future and what happened and what I don't like, what I like and so on. So they also sent out, or Bitwig Studio sent out last year, some kind of newsletter. Looks like this here. What changed in 2024? Look back at Bitwig's milestones. And 2024 was a big year for us and so on. So they released Bitwig Studio 5.2. And it's interesting to me, maybe write this in the comments down below. Do you like actually these devices? Do you use these devices? Do you prefer these devices over something else like VSTs or so on? Let me know in the comments down below. Would be interesting. So for me, it's like they are great. They sound great. I think they are great additions, but it's not like something I really needed, if you know what I mean. It's not like, that important to me. So for instance, I prefer the usual or the normal compressor over this one here, because for me it's a bit overly complex in a way. And I also have sometimes no idea what this thing is doing to my sound. So I usually go back to the old one because it has just 3 knobs and I know what they're doing and I can move on. Also here, this sculpt, focus and tilt and over and so on. So over is great. It's a nice clipper. It's a nice addition. But sometimes I just prefer my old hard clip preset because of the CPU usage. Then here these EQs. I guess they are great. They sound great. Probably, I have no idea. I never used an original EQ, analog EQ. And I prefer normal EQs over that. So I can dial in at a certain position, a certain EQ boost and so on. So I never actually really use these. It's probably more interesting for mastering engineers and mixing engineers and so on. But at the same time, I guess no mastering engineer is using Bitwig Studio. I have no idea. Maybe they do. And then again, they are probably using their own VSTs. I have no idea. It's just me. It's just a subjective opinion, a subjective view on this. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. So they also just highlight here only the big devices basically, but if you go into this here, you can see it's not just only the compressor on these devices, but they also here introduced some precision editing for the arranger, which was a big thing. You can now use here a lot of key commands for that. Then they also completely changed the GUI system, the rendering system, bring everything here to the GPU, which makes it much faster and yeah, I guess high FPS. It's more smooth now, everything, and it frees up your CPU for processing, for audio processing, which is a big deal. And it was probably not an easy task, like I said, because they are releasing on different platforms on Linux, Mac OS X, and Windows. So it's probably not an easy task. Undo for plugins, pretty great actually. So there was a lot of changes here, underlying systems that are revamped or made better, or fixing bugs and so on. So it's not just these devices. It maybe look like it's not much here from this picture, but there was a lot of work involved, right? So they only released actually 5.2 in 2024, and they announced Bitwig Studio 5.3. So it's not released yet. It's coming probably in the next days, next weeks. I don't know. Maybe this week, maybe next week. But here they announced Bitwig Studio 5.3. So again, this release here is for me like, it's nice to have, but it's not something I really needed. So these drum devices here are really great. But if I need an 808, I just use a sample and move on. Maybe there are others that like to use these devices more over some samples. I try to make them, I try to use them here from project to project, and they are sounding great. But it's, again, it's not like I needed them in my life, but they are great. They sound great and they work great. But then here's the stepwise, and the stepwise, I was a bit puzzled, or I don't know why they did this, because this is like this typical Bitwig thing where they have like two worlds inside of Bitwig Studio, and these two worlds never connect in a way. They are completely separate. So here's the stepwise. The stepwise is a step sequencer with a nice interface, but it lacks features, right? It's just a simple step sequencer with just some rudimentary features. But then we have the grid. We could do everything that you can do inside of stepwise. You can do inside of the grid and add features on top of it, right? You can make it better and more feature rich. But the grid misses this interface, okay? So you have these two worlds. You have the grid, where you can do basically everything, but it misses the nice interface. And here you have a device that has a nice interface, but it misses the features. And you can't connect basically these two worlds. So this is kind of a problem in multiple areas. Is this just the drums here? Yeah, okay. So yeah, these two worlds, and they never kind of connect. And this is also the case for, let's go here into Bitwig Studio. If you have here the polygrid. So inside of the polygrid, we have the recorder, and I always kind of rant about the recorder all the time. Because the recorder just can record 6 seconds of audio, and you can only play it back. There's no position. You can't change the position of the playback. You can't change the playback speed or the playback directions, okay? So it misses a lot of features, but you can record audio on the fly just with triggering here this input. So pretty dope. It's actually a playback buffer. But it misses features. But then we have the sampler. The sampler has all the features we need, or I need, to make great sounding granular reverbs or granular effects, right? Everything is in there. Cycles mode, textures mode, you can change the grain size, the position, the playback position, everything. But it can't record, okay? So this one can record, it misses all the features. This one can't record, but it has all the features. There's no way to combine these two worlds. It's the same thing with the stepwise and the grid. Two worlds and you can't connect it. It's super frustrating because the solution is so close. You are so close to the, but you can't connect it. It's just not, just make it work, right? What's the problem? And they released this grid here a few years ago, and it's like this for years, and it's so frustrating. It's unbelievable. Just connect it, right? Make it work. What's the problem? I want to make some nice granular effects. I want to make granular reverbs, and it would sound so nice, really. But anyway, that's how it is, right? Then there are some other things here inside the grid. The trigger problem, right? We have here a trigger module, and we have a button. And let's take an oscilloscope here. Sorry. So yeah, trigger sends out short bursts of a gate. Very short, pretty easy. So you push it once and you make two things at once. So you switch on and switch off. And then you have a button where you can switch on and switch off with two button presses here. And this is great inside of the grid, but if you want to make an interface here, right, the button works, of course, only for the button. Switch on, switch off. So if you want to make it work for the trigger, first you can't actually modulate this here. It's not a modulation target for whatever reason. So you have to create some kind of logical system here to make it work. I posted something on my Discord lately, which is super short. But why do we need this, right? Why do we need to do this? Just make the trigger here maybe a modulator inside of the modulation matrix. Just make it happen. A trigger would be also nice in here to actually send out for the segments, for instance, a trigger signal. So how do we trigger these segments shapes here without using nodes? It's not possible. You can't use a modulator to trigger actually segments, or maybe here the ADSR. Yeah, why it's not possible? You always have to use a node input to actually trigger these modulators. Would be nice to have here a trigger input, a gate input, or just make the grid part of the modulation system. I have no idea. So it's also like we have this world of modulators that have a different ecosystem. Then we have the grid, which is a different ecosystem. Then we have here, if you have like an audio file, let me put here something in there. You have an audio file, right? You have here at the left side, you have these pitch things you can't modulate, or it's like you have different small little ecosystems inside of Bitwig Studio and they don't connect for some reason. And sometimes it's frustrating and sometimes it's, yeah, I can understand it because there are technical limitations, of course, and sometimes you need to pre-calculate something and you can't change it on the fly, and it's, you know, real time is always something different than pre-calculated and so on. I get it, but sometimes it's a bit frustrating. So a way here inside of the modulation system to trigger actually ADSR or these segments here, these envelopes, would be nice to have. Also here a trigger modulator to actually send out a trigger inside of the grid. Speaking of the grid, and I talked about this I think in the last video, is we have here an audio sidechain to bring external audio signals into Bitwig, or into the grid of the Bitwig grid. Into the grid of the Bitwig grid? Makes no sense. Into the grid of Bitwig Studio, sorry. So we can bring an audio signal, but there's no way of bringing in a node signal from a different channel. I can select audio here. That's possible, but no nodes. Why? Why is this missing? I have no idea. It's probably also not a big thing to make this happen, I guess. Just make it work, Bitwig, right? Make it work. Give me here node inputs from different channels so I can combine multiple nodes into one stream of flow, into one flow of nodes, and then here send it out with a with multiple node outs, right? And then create chords or whatever I want to create with this. Not possible. Speaking of nodes and the node grid, the voice handling of the grid is not good. Of course, we have voice stacking, which is limited to 16 voices. I also have no idea why it's limited to 16 voices. I guess it's because of CPU limitations or CPU load or whatever. Would be nice to have your 32 or more until your CPU dies out. Or maybe make inside of the grid here, bring in some signal types. At the moment, everything here is basically an audio signal, which is probably the reason why we have so high CPU loads sometimes. If you just want to connect some data or triggers or logical modules, it's always audio, right? It's an audio signal oversampled 3 times or whatever, or 4 times. And yeah, it gives you high CPU loads just for some on-off data points. So in plug data, we have different types of signals. Maybe make it so you can switch off the oversampling would be enough maybe for certain signals, because you don't need for a gate signal oversampling, I guess. Maybe make a small little button here on the left side in the inspector, or global on the grid here, just disable oversampling for certain type of signals. Yeah, it would be nice to have this. Ah yeah, I was speaking about voice sending. So if you want to use this here in polyphonic mode and you have multiple nodes or chords going into the node grid, there's no way of telling where you are with the grid patch, on which node you are, right? You can separate this here maybe with the, what's the name? Pitch in, right? And then you go into a merge. And then you can separate these voices here a bit. But there is here this, for the voice stacking, there's a voice talk and voice info, right? So this would be nice to have voice info also for polyphonic voices here, not only for the voice stacking. So I can decide what I want to do with the lowest node, with the, you know, with the second node, the third node, and so on. Maybe give me an index on which node I am currently, and then index it from the bottom, maybe the lowest node, and the next highest node, then the third node, the fourth node, and so on. So I know exactly all the time on which node I am, so I can separate it, maybe build some arpeggiators with it, or some change the chords on the fly. Would be nice to have. Just this voice stack info here for polyphony would be nice. And then of course the big elephant, what I'm talking about all the time, but this is not a small change, this is a big change. Make it so that you can actually build interfaces for the grid. Sometimes I have here very big grid patches, here my generative ones. Maybe let's use this one here. Takes a bit to load. But you can see here, it's a bigger patch and you can change all these knobs easily, but it's a bit overwhelming, right? So sometimes I just want to have this button, and this button, and the rest I want to hide away just from the user, so it's not overwhelming anymore. I just want to highlight certain things here and then make it visible inside here of the modulation matrix, or maybe make a different matrix here, interface matrix or something like this, where I can make certain devices here visible in here. So I don't need to open up here this big grid patch and people need to go in and see all these modules and oh god, I don't know what to do, and they close it down, right? So I want to make a small little abstracted interface here in the front of the device. So an interface designer. And like I said or told multiple times, I thought they're going this way with the Polymer synthesizer here when they introduced Polymer last year or 2 years ago. You can see these modules or sections here are basically grid devices, or they look at least like grid devices. There are small little differences here and there. But I thought, well, this goes in the right direction. This is actually exactly what I want. I want to have grid modules in the chain down here, and the rest of the patch is abstracted away, right? You can open this up here. Really great. It's exactly how it could be. So you don't need to design, you know, don't need to design a completely new interface designer. You can just rely on the design of these modules and just make them available here in a certain kind of grid. So you can drag this down here, put this here, and then the rest of the patch is just abstracted or hidden away inside of this bigger window here. So I thought they'd do this in the next update back then, but again, it's 2 years ago and nothing happened so far. And it would be so great to create devices and presets this way. It would be easy and fun, and probably a lot of people would be happy to use more grid devices and not having to go into these big views and overly complex patches here. So maybe we get this in the future. Would be great to see, actually. So here's also, again, here this kind of bipolar thing in Bitwig Studio. You have the interface, which is nice. You can use it. and you can open up here this grid patch. But if you want to change this grid patch, right, you can do this by right clicking here and say convert to polygrid. And boom, you have now a grid and the interface is gone. It's like they don't want you to have these two worlds connected. They always bring this wall in between, right? It's always this world or this world. You don't get the features here, but the other features you have to go to this world, and then you miss all these features, right? So it's always like this. They make this on purpose to frustrate me. I have no idea. So now the interface is gone, right? And now we are back here on the grid. We can change everything, but the interface is gone. So yeah, that's two worlds basically in Bitwig Studio. No idea why. Yeah, I'm also having here this snare sample already in there. The problem here is, let's put this here to raw. So we have the snare sample here in raw mode. And I know a lot of electronic music producers, when I watch tutorials, they use audio samples or audio files on the arranger itself. They drag this in here and they create beats with this, right? So here's the snare there and so on. And then they want to pitch it, of course, right? So here in raw mode, you can't actually pitch. So you can change the gain, you can change the panning, but pitch is grayed out. So you have to put this into a different mode. So repitch mode is perfect for that. So here the pitch is still grayed out for some reason. So maybe bring this back. I mean, it should work in repitch mode. You can change the pitch of these snare samples here kind of indirectly. You can change the tempo. So the feature is there, but the pitch buttons are grayed out for some reason. I have no idea why. So it shouldn't be that much work to implement this, in my opinion, because the feature is already working here with the tempo indirectly, right? You can pitch it up or down without artifacts. I think the closest thing you can get to this is to use here the slice mode. So it uses here basically the first transient as a slice marker, and then if you pitch this up or down, it's actually pitched. I'm not sure how the algorithm works, but it uses here for the tail when it's too short. It uses here ping pong delay, or you can use then here granular at some point, probably if I push it down. Maybe it doesn't work here with just one beat marker with one transient. But I think that's the closest you can get to this feature. But sometimes you have longer samples with multiple markers in there and you want to just pitch it up or down like you have it in the sampler, and it's not possible. So I don't see a reason why this shouldn't be here in repitch mode, in my opinion. So just enable this here in repitch, and yeah, in slice mode it kind of works here with some drum samples, or in most cases. So that's kind of a workaround. But I have no idea how the slice algorithm actually works. I think they just repitch the tail and the transient stays the same. It's not repitched or something like this. I have no idea. Maybe someone can enlighten me in the comments down below. So that's that. That's the audio system. And speaking of the audio system, I usually, when I create drum and bass, sometimes I make some sound design sessions, right? And I just fake this here with a test tone. And that's maybe here, let's say a saw. You can see. So you create bass sounds, and then I have another audio track here, and I record stuff coming from the sound design channel here. And then I hit record, more or less. Maybe make this from the beginning. bring this up. So I record and record inside of a loop, right? In a arranger loop. And back then before they introduced the comping system, you could do something like this here, and you ended up with an audio clip, and inside of this audio clip there was like an audio event that's with infinite length. So you had a very long audio event inside of this short clip here. So let's stop here for a moment. And then I recorded here some sound design sessions, maybe bass lines, fiddling around with EQs and compression and distortion and so on. And then I ended up here with this clip, and then I could just go in and move this around, right? And go into a certain range here where I did something different with the sound design. But now I'm always ending up with these lanes, with comping lanes. And there's no way for me to actually disable comping. It's always like this. And I just wanted to disable comping because I never use it, I never want it. I just want it completely removed from my daily life. I don't need it, okay? So make a button inside of the settings to disable this completely and restore the old behavior, where I could just record here inside of a loop into a very long audio event. And my workaround for this is nowadays to record into the clip launcher. So this is what I need to do. So let's record here. I can show you here how this looks like then on the arranger, because it was so nice. I was designing sounds all day, just recording into a loop for maybe 5 minutes, and then I could swipe through the audio events and find certain positions inside of this audio file that fits my groove, my drums. Oh, that's enough. So now I record into the launcher, and then I have to move this here. Then I need to enable this here, and then I cut this here, and then I can again move through this audio file and find certain positions here with a drum loop on top, right? And then you dial it in, and then you find some sweet grooves. Or maybe make this shorter, use a different one and find another position, duplicate this, find another position. Then you could create nice little grooves with this. So I have to always use the clip launcher for this, record into the clip launcher, move it over here, cut it, and then I can do this. And it would be nice to have this here back inside of the arranger, because I never need comping. I never needed it. I never wanted it. I hate it. No, I don't hate it. I know a lot of people use this, but I don't want to. So yeah, that's the comping feature. Yeah, these are just a few things from the top of my head. There's probably a longer list of things. I haven't written it down probably, or I've written it down probably somewhere. But these are just things from the top of my head to describe some things here and there. So for the future, I know a lot of people want to have here like piano roll improvements, and they already wrote about this, right, in the thing here when they announced Bitwig Studio 5.3. I think there's here this what comes next, right? We are working on some fundamental workflow improvements to how you work on the arranger and in the piano roll. So a lot of people want to have scale highlighting. I guess it's not a big deal for them to make actually here an overlay, graphical overlay, to show you which notes you need to play to actually play inside of scale. I find it a bit boring and too simple. I just want to have maybe something more modular, because that's why I love Bitwig Studio. It's modular, so maybe make the piano roll modular. Would be the first piano roll actually on the market that is, yeah, customizable. So make me tweak things or just reorder some notes here, remove notes, add notes, maybe add buttons, or let me create my own overlays, or maybe use a scripting language. I have no idea. So for chords and notes and melodies, I think it's probably better to have like a guide system, so you can see when I have the C here and the G, that you can see instantaneously that these notes are actually a fifth apart, or that this note here is now a fourth down, right? So this is maybe not that easy to see for beginners and for myself. Or maybe if you have like here a minor chord, maybe something like this, yeah, a minor chord, and you have like a different inversion, that you can see, oh, this is actually a C minor chord, but it's in version 1, right? Because sometimes you have chord progressions and you notch these notes around here in different inversions, and it's not clear to see that this is a C minor chord. What it is, it's just a C minor chord in a different inversion. So systems that help you with this kind of visualize what you are actually looking at, and then you can treat chord progressions better, I would say, than just using simple scale highlighters to see a minor scale or a major scale or Phrygian scale or whatever. In my opinion, they can add this too, but it's probably not a big of a task for them to make an overlay here, a graphical overlay, to make it visible, but which kind of scale you are. So these are some ideas. I have more ideas here for the piano roll. So in my opinion, make it customizable, maybe scriptable, maybe make something for the note grid here. Because in the note grid, you can do a lot of interesting things, but it's not clearly visible what happens to the notes when you add processes here, right? Processes. And you can hear it then, of course, because you have your note out and you have your synthesizer here playing the notes, but you can't see it. So many people are visual, you know, they need some visuals, me too. So it would be nice to see then when you apply certain processes here to the note grid, what happens actually to the notes on the piano roll, so you can see it more clearly. Maybe a device in here like an oscilloscope, but for notes. So you see a piano roll and then the changes before and after, something like this. Or maybe make it so the piano roll actually tells you what happens to the notes without actually playing the notes, right? So you can preview inside of the piano roll what happens when you apply here an invert or an amp or, you know, some different processes. So this could be nice. I could imagine something like this. So yeah, this is something I want from the future. And of course, all these things I mentioned in the video. And yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you want from the next Bitwig version, from the next big Bitwig version. I guess 5.3 is releasing the next weeks, the next days, and then they probably work on the next version. Maybe they announce it already directly after releasing 5.3. I have no idea. So let me know down in the comments what you think, what you wish for the Bitwig future, maybe some things that annoy you, and also write it down if you use some of the features that are released in the last year in 5.2. Okay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.